Okay, hello. Today
Hello.
we are at the Data-Driven Formula One channel, and we are discussing colors, colors of racing cars. And again, I'm Ganna Pogrebna, and I have Henz with me, and we're talking about data-driven Formula One in a sense of understanding data and insight we get from data. And we do it kind of throughout the whole history of Formula One from 1950 to now. And today we're going to discuss color and color schemes for different teams.
Exactly.
So I think this topic came up when we did 1950 episode, and during that episode we said that there are different colors in Formula One competition, and these colors initially came from different countries, kind of taking over a particular color. So today we're going to discuss where these colors came from.
Exactly. And the funny thing is we start with a black and white photo.
Yes, but it was a very long time ago.
Right.
So we have this guy, Count Elliot Zborowski, who was kind of one of the organizers of Gordon Bennett Cup, and he suggested during this competition that different national teams could take different colors. So that kind of was one of the first mentions of this, and in this particular cup, different teams did take different colors. So this was the initial kind of allocation of colors. One of the interesting things here is, of course, that red is not Italy, as you can see. So originally it was US. And also, as you probably can imagine, the reason why we have these different colors is because they were present in flags of these countries.
Yes, in opposite to Germany.
Yeah, exactly. So once we've run out. The problem is that the majority of countries can have blue, white, and red in their flags. So once we ran out of these three colors, we started to have issues, and other countries had to pick something else.
Yeah, but I think if I know, for example, the colors have been also shared. I don't know when the first Spanish team participated, but I think Spain also always used traditionally yellow, and maybe something we can see when we talk about 1952. For example, smaller countries also combined colors. So for Switzerland, they use red cars with white stripes, for example.
Yeah, we will talk about that. So in terms of colors, there were several periods that we can talk about. So the first period was between 1900 to 1920s, and this is when it was predominantly one color for a particular national team. So when we talk about that time period, yeah, indeed. So there was just one color. So then we started to have this variation that Patrick is talking about. So that happened later. So we had all sorts of things going on, and currently, like, we do not actually have any country affiliated color scheme, although some teams traditionally try to stick with kind of this quote-unquote national colors, but actually there's no requirement to do so. But originally we had blue for France, red for US, yellow for Belgium. Germany took white. And then, red became Italian after Fiat won this Perkins to Paris race, right? So that was Itala. That was the predecessor of Fiat, as far as I understand. Yeah, so like I said, because we ran out of colors of white, red, and blue, the Brits had to take something else. So they took green. And this is when we started to get this green, British racing green color. And this is Bentley. And so, yeah, like I want to say that the examples that we've got in this presentation are not just Formula One examples, but examples of racing car from just racing teams. And
Exactly.
yeah, so here you can see.
It's interesting to understand why green. I mean, I understand the Green Island, but this would be Ireland.
Yeah, exactly. So part of so not Ireland, but Wales.
Okay.
It was, one of the reasons. So the Welsh flag has white, red, and so it's got a red dragon on the white and green. And so green was one of the colors. Yeah, and it had then some people were saying that it might be related to Irish, but it's Welsh and Irish, and but mostly it's just, I think, the practicality of it. They had to pick something else. not they couldn't pick blue, they couldn't pick red, so they had to pick another color, and they had to pick green as a result. So so that was one of the options. So this is Bleu de France, and as you can see, this is the Le Hay color from 1935, and typical kind of French blue there. And that came obviously from the flag colors, so the French blue.
Exactly.
So this is one of my favorite cars. It's Jag. It's very biased in terms of picture. It's 1954 Jag. It's green. I have several friends who own like these types of cars, but this is the typical British racing green. As you can see, it became quite a lot darker compared to Bentley that we just showed in 1928. But I mean, the British racing green then had all sorts of variations. So, for example, McLaren at one point used stripes, and there were all sorts of variations on this green. But generally, in this earlier periods it was green. But from 1920s to 1960s, we already started to get some variety there. With, for example, some a little bit of gold in some teams.
I mean, especially the British teams, they changed maybe at the end of the 1960s to their, I wouldn't say personal colors, but for example, nowadays we know McLaren as orange, and I think this started at 1968. Or something
after 1968 we started to get sponsorships, so we're going to talk about this, so that's kind of the short time period that we can take.
I'm not sure the orange was based on sponsorship.
I mean, it was the year when they kind of completely started to just completely deviated from color schemes, but it was not. Some of it was due to sponsorships, but some of it was due to just attracting advertisement. We will look at some of the examples.
Exactly. I mean,
but essentially, time-wise, like if we look at this time period from 1920s to 1960s, it was still quite specialized at that stage. So there was some minor variations. So we'll get to what you're saying, Patrick, a bit later. Yeah. So this is, of course, Rosso Corsa, and that's Italian color red. And this is Itala Tipo car, which was kind of very early. That was pre-Formula One car.
Yes. Looks like one of the earliest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so exactly. So that's the Italian specialization, and this is, as you can see, Mercedes and so-called silver arrows color, as we saw in the earlier period. So the German color was white in racing, but then they changed it to the silver, and the reason was very, very rational for that. So, do you want to talk about it, Patrick, or
Yes, I
go
mean,
ahead?
you see it on this slide. We had been back in the year 1934. We had a brand new Mercedes, the W25, as you can see on that photo. Unfortunately, with a little problem, it was 50 kilograms overweight. So the team manager, Alfred Neubauer, thought what he can do. And the most easiest way was to strip down the paint and let it race in its pure aluminum body. And luckily, this was accepted.
And since that time, yeah,
and
this
this
is
was the
Mercedes.
beginning of the legend of the Silver Arrow. So it was done from a pure practical point of view.
Yeah, and as you can see, the slide is called Notable Deviations. So that's basically from that time period, from 1920s to 1960s, we started to see these differences that Patrick mentioned, that, you know, sometimes it would be orange and sometimes it would be something else. So yeah, so the notable deviation was for German teams, particularly Mercedes, you know, it was the silver color.
Yes. But practically it became the new color because also Auto Union and Porsche, they drove in silver and not in white anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So that
practically changed the color.
Yeah. And so it originally had this this kind of silver. So yeah. But you know, for practical reasons. And this is this 1934 car that, you know, had to be stripped of paint to qualify. Yeah.
Right.
And this is our, you know, what, as we know, Mercedes, you know, now in a sense, silver arrows color scheme, and that became quite traditional for Mercedes to be in this color. Even, you know, in latest seasons, we see kind of green bits and still kind of silver color on Mercedes.
Yes, if I am correct, they changed the color from silver to black to support the Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. So that's the most recent, but I mean, like 2019, we still had you know, kind of silverish color.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even McLaren Mercedes, it had you know, the period when they was sponsored by Vodafone, right? It was still silver and red. Yeah, so that quite a traditional. So that's kind of, we start with this notable deviation. So that's Mercedes was one. So then, yeah, if we could go to the next one, yeah. So that's Brabham, and obviously that's another British, completely weird coloring for a British team. As you can see, this is a car from 1962, and it, as you can see, has nothing to do with green. Is blue and yellow, and again, this was like one of the notable deviations, and you know, several teams were allowed to differentiate themselves from the kind of the traditional green, and we will see several of these deviations later. Like, for example, Lotus, you know, we had black at one point. So yeah, even though black traditionally was a color for Japanese teams, it was not a traditional color for British teams. But this one is blue and gold, as you can see.
And I think Brabham somehow stayed with blue also the details. I remember the Brabham BMWs, they also had the blue, but which also came partly from their sponsor Olivetti, which had the blue colors. Yeah,
but I mean, this is even prior to sponsorships. We had some of these deviations. So that's Brabham. So the next one, that we have. Yeah, so this is Lotus. As you can see, this is still green, but we already have stripes. And we had this gold, green and gold. But like I said, Lotus was also black and gold at several points in time. And so that's again, I mean, I'm really looking forward to when we're going to talk about Lotus, because I really like this team. And I think it's quite remarkable newcomer. Was quite remarkable newcomer when it arrived. But certainly, this was very very interesting, also very interesting color scheme. And as you can see this on this picture, then eventually we also started to get names of drivers on the cars, and that like painted on the cars, and that was also part of the regulation. And we will look at, when we look at the later time period, we will look at the current regulation about paint.
Yes, and also later in the 1960s, I think it slowly started to put commercials on.
From 1968, from late 1960s, let's just say, we had, we will get to that in a second. So this is it. So this is Love Surtiska and Team Gunston. There was a South African team that was first allowed to use a sponsorship brand on the car. So the reason for that was that was a completely private team, and private money in the team, and so they needed to have this display, and they were allowed to do that. This is not obviously this car is from the car that you see on the picture. I couldn't actually find an open source picture of Team Gunston car, but you can find that it's basically if you look for that car, it's orange car and it's number 17. So if you Google it, you will find it and you can have a look at it. And I believe it displayed the sponsorship of Shell on it. You could actually see the logo, and but this is kind of another example of how sponsorship was displayed on some of the earlier cars. So very quickly, obviously, other teams also picked up this. Of course. This possibility to display sponsorships, and I mean, this is also one of the biggest money makers. Okay, that's another very cool color scheme. This is Jordan. This is American make. As you can see, again, a lot of sponsorships, but they also have this hissing seed. So this is the nose made in the form of a snake, and one of the reasons why it's yellow is because yellow made more money. It's very bright, very cool, and just in terms of brand, this for Jordan, that was quite a good decision. So again,
yes, and I think at that time there was no other yellow car. So interesting, Jordan, for several years, I think they stayed with the yellow after they started off being green as an Irish team, and also they had green sponsored like 7-Eleven, but after this, I think they switched to yellow. Mm-hmm. And with being yellow, I think they after this, they got the German Post Service as sponsor, which also had been yellow. So with being yellow, somehow you attract yellow companies as being green.
It was very, very lucrative for them. But like that was like one of the biggest money maker in the sport at that point in time. So that was a very cool decision. And to take yellow, and so that was, but that was already the time period from 1968 when we saw a large range of colors and like all sorts of things happening. And like I said, there is no current requirement on Formula One cars to carry any particular color dependent on nation where the company comes from. So you could do whatever you want pretty much.
Yep.
And we saw all sorts of colors Yeah.
Exactly, and as you can see also on that slide, the colors, they not only had been there for the sponsors, but also the teams, of course, they thought how the cars look best on TV, and at that time more and more families got LCD flat screens, and this is also had been one reason why some teams changed the cars to make them a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, so that the cars look better on the LCD flat screens.
Yeah, we will go through Ferrari example that Patrick put together for this episode. Oh, yeah, exactly, coming up. So that's exactly it. And the rest we will now also see not only the pictures that I found, but also some examples from Patrick's private collection where you could see the difference. So yeah, and that's the difference quite striking. So we have here some of the earlier Ferrari cars, and you can see the difference in the color compared to the later Ferrari cars, and it's almost burgundy red in the early days, and kind of blood red, bright red
Exactly.
currently.
It was a very dark red in the beginning, and this was not only Ferrari. If you see the Alfa Romeo from the pre-war, so the 1930s, 1920s, the red was quite dark and not the shining red as we all know from today's Italian race cars.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So so this is kind of just to showcase the difference in the color, and then and then we will also see here we go. So that's
exactly here. So you see my private garage, and you see cars from different years, and you see a little bit the changes. For example, quite in the right, you see a 1948 Ferrari 166 Spider. You will see this dark red. In the middle, you see the end of the 1980s, a Ferrari F87. If you compare, if you see the cars not in comparison, it looks quite similar. But if you see the car directly beside the 2007 one, you see that it's much darker. And I will come to this in the next slide, why the different reasons. You cannot see it that good on photos, but in the background you see, in the background is the 2007 Ferrari, and this is even in a metallic red for whatever reason.
Yeah, and I also like how you have boxes at the back with more.
Of course.
and we can only guess.
For the next episodes.
But how many Ferrari cars we've got there. So so this one, I just want to explain to the viewers that this is an example where we have sponsorships showcased on a Ferrari car, and this is Marlboro. This is like an iconic Marlboro sponsorship that a lot of people might remember from back in the day when Michael Schumacher was competing, right? And he had this iconic Marlboro thing at the back.
Yes, and I mean, there's an interesting story, not the story itself, but I think it was Marlboro or one of its competitors who already tried to have sponsorship much earlier with Ferrari, but Enzo Ferrari, who never smoked in his life, he famously said, "My cars don't smoke," and he always rejected sponsoring from cigar companies in his lifetime. So this Marlboro only came at the end of the 80s or beginning of the 90s to the team.
Yeah. So when when Enzo wasn't around to make the decisions, a firm decision to and here again we see this point that Patrick made earlier, that so we had basically, like, if we are talking about why we saw the different colors, some of it was because of the technical reasons like the weight, and other pragmatic reasons why the teams would change color. For example, there is a different weight to different color. Like, I know that to paint the racing car white, you need three coats of color at least, but black, you just need one. So that would be a lot lighter, in terms of wait. So that's one reason. The second reason is sponsorships. A third reason is, of course, this flat screen versus so basically the changes in technology of viewing, right? So that's the reason you can see on the screen right now. So yeah, we had the more opaque colors that kind of look better on the screen, so compared to kind of shiny.
Exactly, and also what we saw lately with, which I think Red Bull started to have matte colors because they should be better regarding aerodynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting, as we speak about Marlboro, I remember, I think at the end of the 1980s, the McLaren team, as they had Marlboro as the main sponsor in one season, and I think Marlboro was thinking to change the colors to something like yellow-orange. So they had one car in the traditional red and white, and they had the other one driven by Keke Rosberg in a yellow-orange white combination. I think this was quite discussed, and after this, it was forbidden to have the cars in different colors, which became relevant for another cigarette company. I think it was late 1990s when Jacques Villeneuve had been at British American Racing, where they originally wanted to, as the company had two different brands, and the idea was to have one car with the one brand and the other car with the other brand, but due to the regulations was forbidden, so they painted the left side in one design and the right side of the car in the design of the other brand.
Yeah, I just want to explain to the viewers, so we don't mean that the cars from different teams could not be different colors, but that the cars from the same team should have the same color scheme. That's what Patrick means by saying that. Yeah. So but generally, we have pragmatic reasons for different colors. We have sponsorship reasons for different colors, and we have viewing reasons for different colors. And then so in terms of red, we found quite a lot of research, but this is a very famous paper from Nature that looks at sports and red, and they found in this particular paper that if you look at various competitions, not just car competitions, but football and some other sports, that wearing red is associated with higher probability to win. And this may have something to do with why Ferrari likes red so much. And
yes, and I mean, I just saw yesterday another article about the psychology in advertising. So red normally is a very bold statement. You must be very self-convinced to put something in red because you get all the attention, because it is something very deep inside of human that we relate the red to blood, and our ancestors, if they saw blood in the Ice Age, they thought it's important to start running because maybe there's a tiger, angry mammoth. So it was something to act fast. So now we still understand red as a very bold statement. So if we see ourselves dressed in red, we see that we are somehow self-convinced, and making us believe in ourselves helps, of course, get to our limits.
Yeah, in this particular paper, they said it's basically testosterone-driven signal that red kind of signals. So it is psychological. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and maybe you also may relate it to different culture, as let's say red is much more emotional than white. So it may be somehow fitting that the Germans cars which are more white, silver, which you relate more to the typical cliché, being more calm, more logical thinking, while Italians based on the cliché are more emotional and so more red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who comes from Ukraine and we have yellow and blue. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah,
You have to find out.
I think you have like one of the next slides. You have this information that they took it as a kind of a sign of passion, right? So that's what
Yes,
Enzo Ferrari was thinking.
maybe this would be an interesting topic also for one episode to see what the companies define as their core values. So, for example, if you see the core values from the Ferrari company, they have 8 core values defined, and interesting, they always combined their values. For example, one of the combinations is the individual and team, and another combination is passion and excellence. This is also quite interesting if you're working in related to business ethics, is to see what are the core values, where come the core values from, and passion combined with excellence was clearly, you can relate to Enzo Ferrari, and if you know a little bit the company history for Enzo Ferrari, he was also a racer. For him was important the success of the race team, and selling the cars was only a way to finance the race team. So their company values come a lot from the race team.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
yes, so also, I mean, he later said, if you ask a child to draw a car, certainly he will draw it in red. And if you see the output from the factory in 1919, 85% of Ferraris had been built in red. I mean, a little bit different times, 80s, 1990s. In general, the world was a little bit more colorful as today. I mean, if you see now on the streets, like 80% of the cars are silver, gray, metallic. But let's say I remember 1990s, people still bought cars in colors. But even today, here a number from 2018, 40% of the production cars are somehow red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the color still stays very relevant for the company.
Yeah, exactly. And we see evolution of red color as well, right? So now I think it's more kind of deeper reds, kind of probably going back to more traditional reds. Yeah, and like you have it on the next slide, it's also influenced other industries, right?
Exactly, and you, as you relate red with success, with fast. I mean, this other companies use this. If, for example, here you see some trains from Italy, with somehow also related to Ferrari. You see on the right the private train, the Italo, which the former Ferrari team chef and chairman Luca de Montezemolo had led the consortium. So they developed this private train to compete with the public train company in Italy, as
Trenitalia.
in all countries here in Europe. So on the left, you see the Trenitalia, the state-owned company. Also red, quite interesting, but a little bit more light red. So you see in Italy, their high-speed trains are both painted in red. And if you ever plan your next Italy holidays, it's quite recommendable to transport yourself from one city to another. They have a quite
I was just thinking that this country, I mean, I probably I think it's probably a coincidence, probably has nothing to do with that, but if you think about kind of German intercity trains, they're all kind of whitish, and TGV is probably a little bit blue. I don't know what they're currently like, but yeah, they used to have quite a lot of blue on them. So maybe there is this sort of national specialization in paint. It's probably has something to do with it. I don't know, maybe it's just culture, But
Yes,
certainly
and I
something
mean,
interesting there.
so yeah, I mean, maybe as I've said to you, as German culture is from the cliche a little bit more calm, more logical. It's more white, silver, and adequate color. Where other countries, as France, Spain, or Italy, use more colorful colors, independent if it's red, yellow, or whatever, or blue, of course.
Yeah, and that's again the red arrow train from Italy. So this is the Trenitalia train.
By the way, and just as a last fun fact, there's also a silver arrow in Italy. It's a little bit slower than the red yellow. Yet error. Sorry.
That's it.
But let's go back here to the.
So if we just talk about, like, we've talked about racing in general. So if we talk about Formula One paint, that is very, very heavily regulated. And I actually have an extract for you from the FIA regulations of what it should be like. So as you can see, there should be, like Patrick said, the same teams should have the two cars, should have the same color scheme. So they have to be distinguished from each other by drivers' names. So drivers' names should be on the car. Now we are also lucky because the drivers have different helmets. So normally the color of helmets are quite distinct. So you can tell, I normally can tell by the helmet usually, because like I can't see what name is written there. But the helmets do help. Then we, obviously there is also quite race numbers. So we do have race numbers, and race numbers are random. It's just randomly drawn. As you can see, there is as written in point 9.2 that racing season numbers will be permanently associated to drivers by ballot. Such numbers be then used by that driver during every Formula One championship. So when you enter as a driver, you draw a number and that number should be displayed on the car. And then there are quite a lot of regulations around sponsorships, but that's a lot of people ask whether that's painted, these things are painted, or they're stickers. They are stickers. And I found actually quite a nice video from Ferrari where they show exactly how they put all the stickers on the car. It's a very precision technology how you do it. And as you can imagine, it's pretty heavy as well. So the stickers are heavy. So you need to be very, very careful. And we will make a link to this Ferrari video, so you will be able to see it at the bottom. And then, another thing is, so how exactly you paint a car. So this is a McLaren there is a very nice blog post that I found from McLaren where they describe exactly how they do it. So this is, of course, a car from back in McLaren Mercedes days when it was silver and red. So this is kind of one of my favorite designs. So I don't actually like the orange that we have right now. It's really weird to me. I mean, I quite like this one, kind of from Vodafone days. So normally, so you need to be very careful with color because paint adds weight. Like I said, to paint the car in different colors would add different weight. So you need a special kind of calculation to understand how much paint you need and how much it would add to the weight of the car. But normally the painting process is quite tedious. So first you do this paint back. So what it is basically full size chassis mock-up of how the painting job would look like. So then you actually do some sanding and filling and priming for the car, and you then put 2 or 3 coats of primer. For the majority of teams, the primer would be white. It's not always the case. So sometimes you would have it, for example, you could have it in black. But yeah, normally it's white. So for McLaren, at least at the time when they wrote the blog post, it was white. And then you start to add different colors so that you actually can see on the car. So you put the primer, and then on top of the primer, you put the actual racing color that you need. So again, you need to do the demasking and remasking in between when you put the primer and you put the actual color. And then, yeah, so you would add colors gradually to it. And then, so you kind of put 2 coats of the quote unquote actual color. And then you need to heat cure all the components. And heat curing is basically, you have to take all the parts that you painted to 60 to 65 degrees, and you need to hold it for 40 to 55 minutes. So by that we mean, of course, Celsius. I'm not quite sure what Fahrenheit equivalent is of that, but quite high, I guess. And then, you need to basically dry everything in a flat finish. So, and then you put it all together. So what I was actually surprised about is that you basically would repaint it during the season quite often. So like it's quite an often repaint job, because I thought that you need to train in a car. But naturally it takes several days, 2 to 3 days to paint it again. So, so sometimes you would need to do that instead of actually, training in the car. So that's quite so you need very, very precise processes everywhere. And then you apply stickers. And like I said, if you want to see how the stickers are applied, we're going to append the link with Ferrari video where they show precisely where different stickers go and how, so this is it. This is this post of how to paint a Formula car from McLaren and Ferrari video on stickers, and these links will be below this video as well. So it's quite a big job, and you need to be very, very careful. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of all the different things that happened with color in racing, I guess, not only Formula One, but in racing in general. And right now we don't have any strict rules on, we have very strict rules about, painting of the cars, but we don't have any strict rules on what color the car should be, considering that anything could affect the color. Sponsorships could affect the color. Traditions of the company could affect the color, traditions of the nation could affect the color, and a lot of different things that probably we're not thinking of right now, but could be important for the driver or the team.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I guess that's what we wanted to say about color. And so do let us know what you think, and if we missed something, please do write below this video. But yeah, I mean, the color is a big, it's a big decision. It's very important for weight. It's very important for sponsorships. And it could be a money-making mechanism, and it could be something that makes your team stand out for the sponsors as well as for the viewers. So yeah, so thanks a lot. Thanks, Patrick, for
Thanks to you.
For helping me with this episode. And
it's very interesting to speak also a topic which you not directly think of about Formula One, but quite interesting from the history and how much this is still valid today. As you see, normally Ferrari, Mercedes, they still have this classic colors. We have now McLaren in orange, as it's, I think, related back to to the 1968 or somewhere from there, because it was the classic color of the company for so long. And I mean, it's especially important, and we don't see this only in Formula One, that from time to time you have to somehow go back to the heritage of your company to see how you can distinguish yourself from the competitors. And colors and design is clearly one way.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of reinvent the car, rediscover the team, and all this. So that's extremely important, and that's what we see in all these different colors. Yeah, so there is still in some competitions we do have national colors present. That's not true for Formula One. That's why we're saying that it's not really important here. But in some racing, you still would have this kind of, like Italian reds, definitely, and French blues and British greens. You would observe them in some way. But again, with the current landscape of like many sponsors and many different decisions that are happening at different levels, including efficiency, there is a lot of flexibility in rules in terms of the actual color scheme. Probably not in terms of what exactly you can put on the car, but a color scheme is something where you have quite a lot of freedom. I guess that's all we wanted to say about color, and thank you all so much for being with us, and do let us know if we missed something, and if you want to add something to what we said. We'd be very interested in hearing your opinions.
Exactly. Looking forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.